can hear you speak and also can see your slides.
Oh my God, finally. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would like to thank the organizers for organizing this massive event. Thank you all. My name is Alexei. I just want to say in the beginning that I will send you my slides. I will send them to the organizers, so you don't need to take screenshots, and they will distribute them through email or something. I don't know. They're probably having your email addresses. I will be speaking for about 45 minutes, and then I will be taking your questions via chat box. So please write your questions to the chat box. I won't be reading it during the presentation, but I will be reading it afterwards. As soon as you have a question, put it there. I will read them in the order they are coming. So, the formal title of my talk is Four Presentation Skills. And in order to understand what those four presentation skills are, you will have to endure a rather long backstory. So my backstory starts with the presentation which was already referred to today, called Death by PowerPoint. And it was published in 2007, I believe. And the reason it was called Death by PowerPoint is because Death by PowerPoint was rife. It was all around me. At the time, I was working for a consulting company, and one of my major clients was a Russian Ministry of Economics. And oh my God, so much death by PowerPoint. It mostly looks like this. Oh, I mean, these are some Chinese folks, but this is what it looks like. Replace those folks with Russian-looking guys, and you will get the picture. So what I saw mostly was that presentations had no actionable goals. I kept asking people, yeah, but what do you want after this presentation is over? And people were telling me, no, I don't want anything. I was just informing. I was just, relaying information. There was way too much text than necessary. And most presenters had a habit of reading word for word from their slides. Turning their backs to the audience. It was awful. And the audiences looked like this, or like this, or like this. I keep collecting those pictures. It's really hard for me to stop now. This is what it looks like at the moment. I wouldn't call it death by PowerPoint, but it is certainly a near-death experience. Presentations were, and largely still are, boring, confusing, unconvincing waste of time. And at the same time, around 2007, there were actually a lot of people trying a vastly different approach to presentations. What they were doing were called, and still is called, storytelling. And the most sort of prolific and famous person trying this approach was, of course, Steve Jobs. Now, let me show you quickly what do I mean when I say storytelling, because I think you need to know this. Let me show you quickly a presentation from 1984. It's way before Steve Jobs. This is just to show you that this approach was popular even before him. It's a presentation by a company called Scandinavian Airlines. It's an airline company, as you probably know. So it's a really short one. We were a healthy, profitable airline for 17 years. Everything was fine until suddenly it wasn't. There was a huge industry deregulation and lots of new competition, a small oil crisis. So at the moment, we've lost, last year, we've lost $12 million, which was a whole lot of money. I mean, it still is a whole lot of money at the moment, but in 1984, it was so much more than it is now. And we are currently taking this deep dive. We are on the left, but there is hope for us. We can still do better if we are prepared to fight for our workplaces and our company. We can recover. It won't be easy because we have a lot of fat that we grew in those, fatty years when everything was fine. But we have to trim this fat because look at our competition. Tough street fighters like Delta. Delta was not flying on the international airlines before. It was a purely domestic company, and then it sort of started coming abroad. Look at our European competition. This is Swissair and Lufthansa. On time, punctual. And these are not just emotions. I have numbers to back up my claims. We are worse than Delta. We are worse than Swissair. This is our balance sheet. At the moment, what we have is a deficit of 12 million US dollars. Next year, we have to have profit of the same in the same amount of money. Otherwise, we'll be in bad shape if we don't make it. Now, this is a presentation done by a new general director of the company. He spent a number of months in the company, and he says that I'm convinced that we have a will to work, we want to accept the responsibility, and we have a know-how to recover. This is what I'm proposed to do. This is my plan. We will be consolidating, we will be becoming more efficient, and we are gonna orient towards a totally new market. Now, when I say efficiency, what do I mean by that? It's a new organizational structure. It's a vastly simplified business processes, better punctuality. They were one of the worst in terms of punctuality in Europe. I think they were the one but last company in Europe in terms of punctuality. We're going to trim the fat. We're going to have fewer aircraft types, cleaner network, more profitable routes. We're going to be cutting costs. And this is our new market. And as you can probably see, these are not tourists. This is business travel market. And half of this market at the moment is in the hands of our competition. And in Scandinavia, that is, in our domestic market. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this market away from them. And we're going to do a lot. And there's a lot written here. At some point, it does become a little bit death by PowerPoint here. Then we're going to improve our cargo and charters. And to put it all together, we're slashing costs, improving efficiency, consolidating operations, tailoring our products for the needs of the different market, business travel market, boosting profitability with cargo and tourism, grabbing for every marginal business, and we're going to find it's more fun to work. And this will give us $30 million, which will be more than enough to cover our expenses. But what's the most important thing that I want to tell you here is that we have to stop pointing fingers because it's just not productive. The customers don't care whose fault it is. We have to work together and we have to support one another because this is, for us, this is the only way to recover. Don't wait, start now. There are different calls to actions for different people in the company here, for the baggage handlers, for stewards and stewardesses, for salespeople, marketing, etc., etc. Sale the company, plan maintenance and overhaul so the aircraft will be ready to go on time. Start today, don't waste time. Sincerely yours, General Director of the company. So this is, in 5 minutes, this is a classic storytelling approach. If you look at almost any contemporary book on storytelling, what you will find is mostly the same sort of plot devices, things that they use to move the story ahead. You have a hero in the beginning, you have a hero with a weakness, a likable plane with some eyes and the mouth, who is flying into the thunderstorm with his eyes closed, right? Then he has a desire to recover, to fly high again, but he is up against obstacles, against his own weaknesses and against competition. And the competition is constructed in a way to sort of to exploit his own inner weaknesses. For example, Swissair is very punctual and we are not. And then you have the middle. You have a rescuer, a general director, a safety figure who comes with a plan. And the plan is, of course, to have a vastly more efficient structure, to cut costs and to reorient the company towards a new market. And then there's a battle, this battle for the new market. We're going to take away this market from our competition. And in the end, you have this revelation that it's not just about money, it's not about the market, it's about supporting your colleagues, it's about working together, which of course is a vastly more efficient way to work. And you have a new equilibrium. You have the company which is, well, nearly safe. The company was safe, by the way. This was a very sort of successful transformation attempt on the part of the general director. So when I say storytelling, this is what I mostly mean, using this approach to presentation. And what Steve Jobs was doing, he was doing all the same stuff. He had a company who was the underdog of a very small company up against huge companies like Microsoft and Sony, and they have a desire to do something different, and they had a plan, and their plan was mostly about creating computers that were beautiful, easy to use, with great engineering and working as a whole, as a single ecosystem. And they had this battle for the market, and the self-revelation, they discovered that this is actually what the market wants. Design works, beauty works, and now we have, of course, a new equilibrium with Apple being one of the most profitable companies of all time. And then what I observed in the in the next years after 2007, I saw many more people adapting Steve Jobs's storytelling approach, and I saw presentations becoming vastly more interesting, and then they became vastly more entertaining. Never mind, this is a business presentation. I was prepared to pay money just to watch it. I was surprised Apple wasn't charging money for translating their presentations. This is how good they were. And then at a certain point, I thought, oh my God, there's too much fluff. The form has overshadowed the substance. I hear the story, I understand the story, but I don't understand what the business is all about anymore. At one point, there was a lot of text on people's slides. Then there was very little text, exactly like Steve Jobs had. And then I discovered that, oh my God, not enough text. There's not enough evidence. What people are saying is not supported by numbers and figures and charts and graphs, which of course something you need to see in order to, well, to believe the business side of it, right? At first, what I saw was monotonous, boring presenters. Then people gradually became more and more emotional, and now they're almost hysterical. And hysterical, not in like hysterically funny, but in the original meaning of this word, which means suffering from hysteria. And storytelling, sadly, has become one of those nice words people toss around in conferences, like big data or organic or best practices. Yeah, we're going to use storytelling. And then I thought about it. I thought, oh my God, now storytelling has become a problem. It used to be a cure, but now it became a problem. And I thought, oh wow, let's have a look at presentations, how they work for business. And there's something like a sales funnel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term. It's like different layers you have to cut through to get to the result. And on the first layer, you have to be interesting. If you're not interesting, people are not listening to you, you've lost your audience, nothing else matters. And storytelling works great here. Stories make presentations interesting, but then you have to be understandable. You have to, and stories are not always the most understandable genre. Stories have mysteries and plot twists. But okay, let's give storytelling some slack. It works here. But then, as far as credibility is concerned, stories, of course, aren't always the most credible type of information. We need numbers and figures. We need charts and graphs. We need, Excel spreadsheets in order to believe the business side of it. And then finally, you need to be motivating. You need not only to convince people that you're right, you need to motivate them to do something. And especially goal number 1 and number 3, they conflict with one another. Most of the time, people are either interesting or they're credible. It's very hard to be both. Either they're credible and boring or interesting and not credible. So the question to me, as far as I'm concerned, the question is not how can we make presentations interesting, but rather how can we maintain the right balance. And I found an answer in a rather complex um, academic communication model. I won't bore you with too much details, but basically the model asks two questions. Question number 1, does the receiver have sufficient motivation to process? So it's about the receivers, it's about the audience, it's not about the speakers, right? So does the receiver have sufficient motivation to process the information? And the second question, does the receiver have the ability, meaning cognitive ability and expertise to process the information? So do they want and can they process complex material? And if they want and can, you can bombard them with charts and graphs. And if you can't, you use storytelling and charisma. So two parameters, motivation and ability. And I worked in consulting for way too long. Everything is a 2 by 2 matrix for me. So you have to endure another 2 by 2 matrix, ability and motivation. So once again, this is about the audience. And sometimes what I have in my audience, I have no idea who am I talking to at the moment. This is just, you are just a general webinar. Forgive me, please, for that, but you're just a general webinar folks for me. But what I sometimes have, I have people low on motivation and low on ability, and I call those people goblins. I'm very sorry for racism, but I have to say it out loud that this is not a race, this is a state of mind. Uh, I am a goblin some of the time. Sometimes I'm very unmotivated and totally unable to process complex information. But of course, some people spend more time in this state of mind. So for goblins, what storytelling works great, by the way. What goblins like above all is entertainment. Creating entertainment is a great way to build rapport with them, to build this first contact. But then, of course, my goal as a presenter, my goal as a communicator, is to move these people from this lower left quadrant to the upper right quadrant, to make people more able and more motivated at the end of my talk. This is my greatest wish and desire and goal and purpose as a presenter. Now, if I can do something with goblins and create a different breed, a different species. I will go with Tolkien's universe here, okay? I hope you're all familiar with this legendarium. So hobbits, there aren't that many hobbits in this universe. They're rare, but they're very motivated folk. They want to toss the ring in the mountain. They just don't know how to do it. Highly motivated people, ideal students, if you will, eager to learn, don't know a lot. These are people who can endure lectures. My understanding is that all those boring presentations, when people were boring people with charts and graphs and numbers and a lot of text, they were assuming that what they have before them are hobbits, people willing to learn, not having information. So with them providing information is something you have to do. This is like your work. But then, of course, hobbits are rare. Very seldom people are in this state of mind. Then, if you treat hobbits with lectures, this is how our higher education works, right? It takes very motivated people and it makes people very tired and very knowledgeable. It creates elves. And again, if you remember Tolkien's legendarium, elves are not very numerous, not very motivated, but very capable. They can do great stuff, they just don't want to. And again, what you need to do with elves is more motivation. You can actually sell things to elves because they are intelligent enough to buy complex things. Sales presentations work here great. And finally, what you have is wizards in the upper right corner. And what you want to do with wizards is you want to have a dialogue with them. With goblins, it's just noise. So hobbits hardly can formulate any intelligible questions. Elves don't want to talk to you, but with wizards, they want to talk to you and they want to say something. It's not just you talking. This is not a one-way street anymore. This is not a lecture, that's for sure. You have to have a dialogue. And so once again, my goal as a presenter is to move people to this quadrant. My goal is to make wizards out of you, whoever you are. I'm not sure I will succeed, by the way. But I will try my best. So these are the 4 skills that you need to master if you want to master the art of presentations. You have to be able to entertain the audience. This is very important. especially for people in the lower right quadrant. You have to be able to be a good lecturer, and lecturing is an art, or reporting. This is mostly the same, lecture or report. I will be using those words interchangeably. This is a genre which works in social hierarchy. It assumes there's a great distance between whoever's giving a lecture and whoever's sitting in the audience. And for a report, it's vice versa. It's typically lower levels of social hierarchy reporting to the upper levels of social hierarchy. But otherwise, it's the same genre. Now you have to master sales, selling, and selling is about storytelling. There's no question about it. And you have to master dialogue, especially, which is very challenging, especially with larger audiences. The reason I hate sincerely Zoom and Google Meet is because there's very little opportunity for me here to create this dialogue. I will be having a little bit of dialogue with you in the end, but so far it's mostly monologue. So, four genres. And my insight was that Steve Jobs was somewhere here. What was Steve Jobs doing most of the time? A sales presentation. He was selling his products to the audience. And then other people, those boring presenters, the original boring presenters, started somewhere here. And then they started moving towards Steve Jobs. And then they got sidetracked. They moved to entertainment rather than to sales because entertainment is easier. Selling is much harder, entertaining is easier. And what I urge you to do is not to be seduced by this power of entertainment, because entertainment, of course, is very seductive. Let me show you what happened with slides. There will be this white ball moving around between those four quadrants. So, for example, right now, as you can see, the white ball is in the upper left quadrant. This is an ideal report, an ideal lecture. It's very boring, but it is very objective. These are the numbers. They speak for themselves. There's nothing else. It's just here, show me the numbers. Here are the numbers. As you can see, this is my only job to inform you about the numbers. Now, I will gradually start moving down to entertainment and to sales. For example, I can make the slide vastly more interesting, vastly more attractive by creating a chart. And it also becomes more understandable, by the way, in the process. And then I can do something else. I can create, this is what happens, I think. I think this is the crossroads. This is where people are getting sidetracked. They think, oh my God, this is boring. This is more interesting. Let's make it even more interesting. Let's add some fluff. Let's make it 3D. And this is arguably a slightly more attractive chart. And I can make it even more attractive. I can add a background. I, and finally, I can delete all the numbers because numbers are boring, right? And I have this illusion that my job is to be liked by the audience. And some audiences don't like numbers. So I can just remove all the numbers and create this, emotional atmosphere of celebration. Great results, whatever they are. So, and this is what you have to do, by the way, if you are presenting to 5,000 people. Don't show tables to the groups of 5,000 people. It just doesn't make any sense. But for smaller audiences, they need those numbers. So don't delete those numbers just yet. Let me backtrack a tiny little bit. Let me come back to this and let me show you a different way where you might go. So what you can do is you can create a little analytical note. You can create a resume, a summary of the slide. We are 10% more, we made 10% more money than we expected, plus 10%. And you can actually write this in big, bold letters, in the header, in the title of your slide. And this is what I encourage you to do. This is what it's called action headers. Action headers are full headers. The header below 1H18 sales is what they call an informative header. And this is action header. Action headers have verbs. We made 10% more than expected. It's an analytical conclusion. You have to defend it. This title, you don't have to defend it. Just this is how the results are. And then you can create the slides so it shows mostly what you wanted to show. You are not deleting anything, you are not hiding numbers, the numbers are still there, but you are focusing your audience's attention at this plus 10% because this is the most important thing. This is what you're trying to sell. We did great, and you are saying it with numbers, and you are both credible and understandable. It's not like you're showing a table to the people. And of course, you can sell even more. You can say, okay, all right, give us a bonus then. We did great. And this is probably sort of over pushing, and you will likely to get a pushback here. So I don't know where to stop in this regard, but I hope you understand the progress. This is me selling more and more. And I can go into a conversational mode. I can go into a dialogue by asking questions. For example, how come we didn't expect this? We did 10% more. 10% is a great amount of money. How come we under budgeted for 10%? Let's have a talk. Let's have a discussion. So this is what I mean by four genres. And you can do all of this, by the way, and you should be able to do all of this. It all depends on the audience. You can do boring stuff if the audience is prepared to listen to the boring stuff. You can entertain people. If you have 5,000 people, there's not much else you can do. But I think you absolutely need to learn how to sell your results to the audience and to have a conversation with them. So these are for audiences, and these are for, and you have to have an idea what your audience are. So in the beginning, what I suggest you do is to draw a chart of where you would like to sort of focus your communication, here or maybe here. And this would be more of a lecture, and this would be more of a sales presentation. I hope you understand the difference now. So how do we maintain the right balance? I will quickly tell you what I believe are the four most important things about these four genres. Lecture. Now, what is the most important thing for a report? I would argue that the most important thing is structure. Structure of a report is relatively simple. Let me show you a quick example. It's an example from KPMG, which is a global consulting and auditing company. This is their report. It's a printed material. It's not a presentation, but for a lecture, the structure will be mostly the same. You begin with an outline. What you have in the beginning is, okay, here's what I have for you. This is what I'm going to talk about today. This is the outline, the menu, if you will, of all the things that I have, so people can understand what is the contents. And then what they have next is executive summary. They have seven key points that I will deliver today. For shorter reports, you will be moving them to the end of your presentation. But for larger reports, you will be moving them to the beginning. You will start with your executive summary. And then what you have next is called a bumper slide. A slide which signifies that, okay, all right, we're starting a new chapter here. And this is a blue chapter, and everything in this chapter is blue. We're talking about blue stuff, and then about orange stuff. Bumper slide, okay, new chapter, orange stuff. So this is mostly how it works. You start with an outline, then you provide executive summary. Again, for short reports, you can move executive summary to the end, and then you move one by one. It, just have a look at what is going on at the top of the slides. Can you see the progress bar moving? We're moving towards the end. This is not storytelling. This is too predictable for storytelling. Storytelling should be surprising. Storytelling it's a venture into the unknown. This is a venture into the known. You are saying from the get-go what you're about to say, and in the end you are summarizing. So you start by creating an outline, point one, point two, point three, and then you create this navigational system, right? You're moving, you're showing progress towards the end goal of your presentation, and in the end you're creating a resume summary. I really suggest you use mind mapping in order to structure your talk. I hope you're familiar with the concept. It's like a tree. You have a trunk, three branches here, and a couple of leaves. Um, and I mostly plan my own and as well as my clients' presentations in this software. Professional scriptwriters, storytellers use cork boards, but and I have one in my home, but I can't carry it around. I carry my laptop, so I mostly use mind mapping. Um, this is a software that I recommend. You can try it. It's free, it's very easy to install, it doesn't require administrative rights for installation. Um, More than enough for most of your purposes. Try it. The most important thing for reporting, for lecturing, is having a clear structure, understandable structure. So create an agenda, create a summary slide, use navigation, and use mind mapping up to structure your information. Because the biggest problem, of course, is you have too much information and it needs clear structure. Please make sure that you don't have more than, say, 5 points on one level. You cannot have more than 5 bullets on one slide, for example. It will be too much. You will reach bullet number 6. People will forget what the bullet number 2 is. Um, Sort of break information down, fragment information.
Yes.
Next thing, entertainment. Now, as far as entertainment is concerned, what counts as entertainment? Everything which is non-functional. Jokes, funny pictures, fantastic animations, interesting facts, metaphors. This all counts as entertainment. Anything which is non-functional, anything that doesn't add direct value to your talk, everything which is just pure emotion. So my biggest concern for you is please do not overdo it. It's useful in proportion, okay? I believe that educational content should have some entertainment in it. This is my sort of clear and sincere belief. But please, please do not overdo it. For example, this is something I'd consider to be a bad example. Craniotomy, the slide is about some medical stuff, procedures, and then you have a Madonna. With all due respect, this Madonna is beautiful, but it has nothing to do with whatever. So Comic Sans typeface. It's very unreadable. It's a fun typeface. I mean, it's okay, but it's making things very hard to read. So it has nothing to do, unless you're talking about comic books. And even then, please choose something more readable. Um, this, however, is something I would approve of because this time picture has everything to do with the contents of the slides. So I'd say this is okay. The only problem I have with this slide is that they will remember the cat. If you want, they will remember those fun things, factoids, fantastic animations, etc., which is not something you would like them to remember, right? But it's a sort of it's a trade back. So off-topic details generally decrease recall and problem-solving ability. Minus 46% in recall, minus 59% in problem-solving solution. Seductive details without any sort of relationship to the topic. However, topical humor generally enhances people's perception, better recall, and better overall evaluation of lectures. So, haha can lead to aha. Please use sparingly. There's a U-shaped relationship, so this is persuasion. This is about persuasiveness. So a little bit of humor improves persuasiveness to an extent. It's not a great deal. The effect is reasonably small. But then if you have too much humor, it goes below 1. So nobody buys from a clown, as you can probably know. Too much humor is detrimental. And as far as slides are concerned, this I think is perfect. This, of course, is entertainment. I mean, this airplane, very entertaining, great job on the part of the artist. So keep in mind whom are you talking to. If you're talking to goblins, you need a lot of, you need fluffy bright slides. If you're talking to adults, not necessarily. So you can, once again, you can go two ways. If you are designing a very simple slide with just a name on it, you can make it beautiful. You can use beautiful typefaces, use those, floral ornaments, or you can be perfectly functional, Swiss German, nothing, in excess. Um, and of course, you can have the best of two worlds. This is probably too much, but you can combine this functional Swiss German approach with some seductive details, and I would encourage you to do it. But I would encourage you to start with structure and then add something beautiful. Don't start with the beauty and then make things functional. Start with functionality and then make functional things beautiful. I would argue that you should start with this and then I add something and then sort of calibrate so it's not too much of it. So for entertainment, it works, then it's topical. I'm afraid there's no shortcut as far as learning how to entertain is concerned. It takes a great deal of time to learn how to do it. But I would say that a professional course on design or a course in stand-up comedy is a warranted investment, especially if you are frequently presenting to a people with low motivation and low ability. It helps them a lot. Oh, I forget to mention this. Humor works best for C students, okay? For students who most need pedagogical assistance, humor works best for them. For A students, doesn't work that well, but for C students, it works great. Next thing, sales presentations. Now, selling is storytelling. There's no question about it. So please tell a story if you want to sell. Our brains were designed for stories. Comprehension was higher for stories, 50% higher than for any similar form that people studied. And I think I've already explained you most of the rules of storytelling. 100 years ago, Somerset Maugham said there are three rules. Unfortunately, nobody knows what they are. But at the moment, I would argue that we've pretty much figured what they are. You have to start with a hero who wants something and has trouble getting it. This is the recipe. This is how we do it. It's not that difficult. You have to have conflict. That's the hardest part, I guess, because most people, especially agreeable people, especially women who are slightly more agreeable than men on average, have trouble with conflict. But you have to have conflict in your presentation. No problem, no need to communicate. Discuss tensions. If you're not uncomfortable, you're doing something wrong. Uh, Sales is change management in a sense. You start with a question, where are we now? What is going on? What is the problem? And then you lead the audience to an answer. This is what you want. This is what you need. This is the ideal future. And you lead them to the answer in 3 easy steps, 4 easy steps, maybe 5 easy steps for very intelligent audiences, but not 7 steps. Okay, nobody will remember 7 steps. So this is how Steve Jobs was doing it. This is our hero. This is what we're selling, the world's thinnest notebook. This is the villain. This is our enemy. Sony TZ series. We don't like it. We don't like how it looks. We don't like its functions. I mean, the weight is all right, but the rest, no, we don't want anything like this. We want it thinner, a larger display, better keyboard, better processor. And the green one is our product. The white one is Sony. The green one is MacBook Air. In fact, our thinnest part, thickest part is still thinner than the thinnest part. And this is how it looks like. And I would argue that you can only show this face to the audience, such face to the audience, if you talked about Sony before, if you talked about competition, if you are comparing, you are great. Wow, look at how great it is, because everything is great only in comparison. You have to compare things. Talk about problems, talk about competition, all the versions of your own products. Change status quo. You have to sort of discuss status quo, how it's not acceptable, what you're going to do about it. This is the secret to sales, the secret, I mean. And as far as slides are concerned, please write action headers, so what they call action headers. What's on top is informational header, doesn't have a verb, doesn't have any sort of emotion in it. And high school graduation, they missed the verb here, is essential, right? High school graduation is essential to breaking the cycle of poverty in Canada. This is a statement. Um, I assert that high school graduation is essential. This works as a statement. I assert that context for action doesn't work, right? So begin with I assert and then delete I assert. I assert that Pathways has delivered consistent dropout reduction, and then you prove it with numbers, okay, with figures, with charts and graphs. I assert that. Please assert. Selling is asserting. You are asserting that this is a great product. You are asserting that they say that, but I say this. So for sales presentation, discuss problems. Yes, I know it is uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable here, you're doing something wrong. You have to be uncomfortable. Please set your goals in terms of actions. My goal is to inform you that is okay for a lecture, but not enough for the sales presentation. Your goal is to move your sales process forward. What is the next step in the sales process? Let's have a further discussions about this. Let's make a pilot project. Let's try it. I don't know. So move your sales process forward. And please write action headers on your slide. Write headers with verbs and with full statements of English or whatever language you are speaking. And finally, a few words about the dialogue. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing about being in a dialogue is being in a dialogue. It doesn't have to be verbal. It can be non-verbal, by the way. Most of the dialogue is actually non-verbal. For most part, what you see in the audience is people just nodding at you. I mean, I don't see you nodding or doing anything, actually. I'm not sure you're even there. But for live, I have to visualize, yeah. But for live audiences, hallucinate in a way. But for live audiences, you see people nodding, you see people replying to you by smiling, by having a facial expression of a sort. So make it two-way. You talk, they react to you. They look at their smartphones, which is their feedback that they're giving to you. They are distracted. You are not interested. You have to do something else. Maybe ask them a question. Okay, maybe make this conversation verbal. One problem that most people face when they start talking to larger groups of people is that they get quickly overloaded with the amount of feedback that they're getting. Talking to, say, 4 people is fine. Talking to 6 people, you're getting too much feedback. And then their eyes start to glaze over, everything blurs, and all of a sudden they turn their backs to the audience and start reading their slides aloud. Right? So one useful life hack is to choose 4 people to talk to. 4 people is a manageable amount of people. Choose 4 people in different parts of the audience. They don't have to sit in the front row. That will be awkward. Choose 3, 4 people in the audience and talk to them. And choose people who support you, non-verbally that is. Choose people who nod to you, who smile to you, who laugh at your jokes. You will have a much better time talking to these people rather to, grumpy folks who dislike you. Because if you talk to grumpy folks all the time, you will be, am I doing it right? What is going on? With those people, with smiling people, you don't have to, doubt yourself. Pay more attention to people supporting you. It reduces your stress level. Which is always a problem for public speakers. And then in the end, an ideal situation is for you to act like a radar, to scan the audience from left to right, to measure their temperature, to understand what is going on with them, to have, this, well, mostly simulated, but dialogue. Another reason that you might be not in a dialogue with your audience is because your slides are overloaded. Death by PowerPoint Skull tells us so. Because if your slides look like this, there's very little chance for you to be in a dialogue because most of the time you will be standing with your back to the audience reading your slides aloud. Because they are looking at your slides, you will be looking at those slides. Um, it just there's very little chance for you to do something else. So please do not overload your slides. We know that for the purposes of education, simple slides are better. They give people better understanding, fewer misconceptions, more recall, better memorability. I understand that for a small groups of wizards, for for small groups of high-powered people, you have to put everything on one slide. You don't break things down. You give them a bigger picture because you want to have a dialogue and the audience is small. You can confirm with them, there's very little of them, if they understand what is there. With larger audiences, you don't have this chance. So especially for larger audience, please do not overload your slides. If you have a group of 5 experts in the room, this slide is all right. If you have 5 people in this room, no, this slide is not all right. Please do not show slides like this to the audience ever. At least highlight what is most important. Same amount of text, vastly different presentation. Please highlight what's most important on your slides. Um, and for bigger audiences, if you have a group of 30 people, this is the amount of text which is bearable for them. And use animation, don't present it like this, present it gradually. And for bigger still audiences, for groups of 50 plus people, all you can have is an emotional picture and some text. And then you have to rehearse, of course. Rehearsals are key here. So simple slides free you to detect and interpret feedback. Please do not overload your slides if you want to have a meaningful dialogue with your audience. And write your questions on your slides. Ask questions to the audience. I have really little chance to ask you questions here, but during live presentations, what I mostly do, I ask a lot of questions to the audience by the show of hands, or I might allow some actual two-way dialogue. I will start with closed questions and then proceed to open questions, questions of why and what do you think, and etc. Again, remember that the goal is not to give a great presentation. The goal is to connect to the audience. Something online makes very hard to, but still, I'm trying. I mean, so for dialogue, please observe and interpret the feedback that you're getting in real time. This is key. You have to look at the audience, not because they like eye contact, but because you need this information in order to understand how you're doing. Why all those people were sleeping in the beginning of my presentation? Because the presenter doesn't look at the audience, or he or she looks at the audience and chooses to do nothing about it. Please do not overload your slides. I mean, for small groups, probably. For larger groups, no. And do prepare for the dialogue, put questions on your slides. So, in conclusion, ladies and jelly spoons, create an outline for lecturing and reporting. Entertain, but don't overdo it. For sales presentation, discuss tensions. I know it's uncomfortable. Go ahead, discuss tensions. Tell a story. Have a villain in your presentation. And for the dialogue, you have to monitor your feedback, rehearse, and don't overload your slides. So this is what I've told you, and you will get those slides afterwards. And in the end, there are plenty of presentation skills seminars where people claim that presenting is easy. And I'm not saying this. I think it's really, really hard. I think it's a skill. I think, or rather 4 skills. I think you will be spending a great amount of time learning and mastering it. But I think it is possible. I think it is absolutely doable for anyone. I don't think you have to have any special talent to be a good presenter. Fantastic presenter, maybe you need a talent, but to be a good presenter, I think my experience tells me everyone can do it. So I think it's perfectly doable, and I think it's very well worth the effort. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm ready to take your questions. I will have a look at the chat box now.